Hi guys, my name is Sarah Candelaria and I am the Youth Program Director for New Mexico Wildlife Federation. But today I'm actually taking a slightly different role, although I am going to focus a little bit on nature and getting our kids outdoors. I'm actually here also as a mom, and many of you can probably relate to that. And a mom not only of 3 children, but actually a mom that homeschools her children. And so I have a really different view on how our world has drastically changed since the pandemic. And I'm just here to shed some light on how, as a family and as a leader in the community, we find strategies to really incorporate nature into our classroom and nature into our everyday learning strategies. Okay. So today we're going to cover a little bit of homeschooling during a pandemic, what a sit spot is and what nature journaling is, and on all the benefits, of course. Taking lessons outside, how can it be done? What are the different strategies? Natural loose parts and including them in your outdoor learning and indoor learning, and then some additional resources for you to take home and share with those that might be looking for this type of information. Maybe it might not be you, but you might be connected to people that are now having their kids home full time, and you can be that light to really shed some information and some strategies for them to work with to make it a little bit easier for everyone. Okay, so I just want to take a brief moment to really talk about what homeschooling is and then what homeschooling is during a pandemic, because they are very, very different. Okay, so one of the biggest things that I would say truly for homeschooling is that it is not a race, it is a marathon. And if you talk to long-term homeschooling families, they will all tell you that. And it's a really hard thing to grasp when you're beginning to homeschool or when you're thrown into homeschooling during a pandemic. We all feel like you have to cram this information down our kids' throats and make sure that they're learning and staying on task and making sure that they're up to par. Second graders should know this, third graders should know that. And sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's about taking a step back and really getting to know your child, how they learn, and the best strategies that you can help them cope with not only the situation that they're in, but have some fun while they're doing it. And it should be fun for you too, not all the time, but sometimes. Okay. So during a pandemic, what I would do is I would really encourage people to focus on some life skills. Teaching life skills, now is your time. A lot of times we don't have this quality time with our kids, and you can teach them things that they don't normally get to do. Cooking strategies, how to work on a car, what's the difference between a debit card and a credit card. We aren't, obviously most people aren't encouraging them to take your kids to the grocery store with you, which would be my number one go-to, and take them and teach them how to create budgets. But they can look through ads at home and create meal plans for you, budgeted meal plans. They can do things that, they're not going to do it in school, but truly, these are life skills for them to learn. Now is your time to dive into some hobbies and interests. What do your kids really like to do? Of course, nature time, always a plus. We're always looking for that. How can you include nature? And it doesn't always have to come from a book. And that really kind of speaks my whole vibe of teaching these life skills and interests and hobbies. You don't always have to have a book cracked open in front of your kids for them to be learning. And cherish this time. I know that's a hard thing to say during a pandemic. But really, this is time you're never going to have again with your kids. Once life goes back to normal, whatever normal is, they'll be off at school again. And you'll look back and you'll say, man, I wish I would have really cherished that time. I wish I would have loved on them a little bit more and stopped what I was doing and read another story to them. Building a COVID safe environment for your community is also really important. You're not alone, right? We're not alone. It might feel like you're alone, especially in your homeschooling strategies, but you're not. And you can reach out and you can find ways to blend into your community and get additional resources, homeschooling resources in your community. Oftentimes there are still events still happening, COVID safe events where you can get your kids involved and let them have some peer interaction as well. Okay, so just a really cool quote. Every walk should offer some naughty problem for the children to think out. Why does that leaf float on the water and this pebble sink and so on? Okay, super simple quote, but really this means so much. I focus a lot on not giving my kids the answer. And that's not just with their math problems and how to write a paper, but it's also in simple things like life. Asking them a question back. Why do you think that happens? See what their answer is. Let them lead. Let them lead the learning, and you can be the assistant. Just because we're older and we're the parents or the guardian or the teacher, you don't always have to be in that role. Let them learn and let them teach you. Oftentimes, they will see things that you will never see, and hopefully that includes nature as the third teacher within that circle of education. Okay, so we're going to dive into our first topic, sit spots and nature journaling. Okay, this is something I've become really passionate on here at New Mexico Wildlife Federation and our Nature Niños team. We do a lot of outings within the community with families and their kids, also in the homeschool community. And we're teaching kids to really stop. Okay. Oftentimes we go out in nature and we're like, we want to get from point A to point B and say we hiked that trail and get from point B back to point A and get in the car and leave. Okay. We've all done it. Okay. I still do it sometimes, right? Okay. We did it. Good job. 3-mile hike, high five. Okay. Well, that's not always it. And so we're really learning and teaching our kids to stop, to slow down, and reward patience with new insights about nature and people's connection to it. Sit spots really allow us to provide our children with an opportunity to hone their observation skills and reflect on all of the new sensations they experience on a daily basis. When we're trying to get from point A to point B, we often miss those trees lightly falling, or I'm sorry, those leaves lightly falling out of the trees. We miss that bee on that flower. We miss the flowers swaying in the wind. Okay, so we are trying to slow it down. Okay. And sit spots really allow for children to form a connection to their spot and revel in protecting it, sharing its findings, and visiting it on a regular basis. And this is a key part too. So it is nice to do sit spots in new spaces, a new trail you might find, a new park you might go to, the front yard, the backyard. But it's also nice to find one spot that your child can connect to and say, this is my spot. This is my sit spot, and I'm going to come here once a week. I'm going to visit it, and I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to watch it change through the seasons. I'm going to see all the animals and cool wildlife that visit my sit spot. And I am going to, journal those findings. And they go hand in hand. So when we're stopping and we're enjoying that peace and quiet, we're bringing our nature journals with us. We're talking about our 5 senses, okay? We're talking about what we see and what we hear and what we smell. And we're talking about those differences throughout the entire season, right? So we take a group of kids down to the bosque here on the Rio Grande in the middle of Albuquerque, and we take them to the same spot, okay, every month. And it drastically changes. And it's so cool to see these light bulbs go off and they can really connect with the changes that are happening in their spots. Now, the next level of this is that we are now connecting children to a peace in nature. The key element to having kids that care about nature is getting them connected to nature. We want them to care for our earth. We want them to protect the wildlife, the water, the landscapes, but they won't do that if they don't care about it. And so we need them to care about it. As we move on a little bit, here are some benefits of nature journaling. And nature journaling can happen in all different shapes and sizes, okay? It can be writing, it can be coloring, it can be drawing, it could be finding pieces of nature that gets taped or glued into your journals. But, to go over some of the benefits, it is a shared family activity. It can be enjoyed by all ages and abilities, okay? My whole family can go out. I can nature journal. My 7-year-old can nature journal. My 16-year-old, who doesn't often want to, but I force him to because it's good for him, can nature journal. And grandma can come with us too and bring hers, and she enjoys it as well. It's really healthy for both our minds and our bodies to slow down. We are in a very, very busy world, even during COVID. Sometimes it actually feels busier to me, if you ask me, because I'm juggling all the same things, just in a different format. And we're learning to adjust to that. And when you're adjusting to new things, it feels stressful. So slowing everything down is extremely helpful. It deepens observation skills and balancing out the use of all five should be senses. We want them to make sure that they're paying attention to everything that they can see, touch, hear, feel, taste, if it's appropriate out in nature. It strengthens our hand-eye coordination. We want to see something and draw it. We want to see something and write about it, okay? There's pride of accomplishment in creating instead of consuming, simulating more areas of the brain. So they're making something, not just a connection, but they're documenting something. They're becoming scientists. They're really having something that they can go back to and say, man, I remember that day. I remember when I saw that bluebird. I remember when the leaves were crunching beneath my feet and I could hear it. It leaves a record of your experiences, more personal and cherished than simply a smartphone full of photos. Now, don't get me wrong, I probably have more photos than anyone on this training, upwards of like 32,000 on my phone. Ridiculous, right? But nature journaling does not replace that. It's not something that I can go back and visit and really remember all of my senses, remember being in that spot and slowing down. Okay. Those pictures are often snap, snap, quick, quick, hurry, pose. And that's not what we're about when we're talking about nature journaling. Okay. It is a multidisciplinary activity that can incorporate such diverse subjects as science, language arts, visual arts, and even math. All of it. There you are. Bam, school, all in one little activity, right? Again, it doesn't always have to be out of a book. And these are just some fun photos of nature journaling through the ages. You see all the way from our left side, a tiny little guy with some paint inside a tray, and he's just having at it as he's spending some time in nature. We've got our little first grader right in the middle who's collecting leaves of all shapes and sizes, and then writing what she thinks they are. And then she goes back home and she does a little bit of research and tries to find what leaf actually is that and how can she identify those trees. And same thing with our fifth grader there on the far right. He is spending some time drawing the leaves so that he can go back and identify the plants later. So all different shapes and sizes for all different ages. Another cool quote. Encourage your child to have muddy, grassy, or sandy feet by the end of each day. That's the childhood they deserve. And it's hard to forget, or it's hard to remember this sometimes, right? It's hard. We get caught up in our daily lives. We want to teach them math. We want them writing papers. We want them up to par on their reading skills. We want their science skills. They want to understand biology and chemistry and how things all work. But in the end, they are only children once, right? They're only going to be small once. Let them get out, get muddy, grassy, dirty, get it under their fingernails. They throw them in a bath at the end of the day. I mean, that's how you know they've been out truly experiencing nature and connecting with it. So as we're talking about nature journaling and being able to prepare for a sit spot, I thought I'd put together a quick little list of things that we like to keep in our nature backpack. So when we go on a nature adventure, which is pretty much every time we leave the house, because we always bring it with the hope that we'll have some time to experience nature, these are some of the items that we tend to put in our backpacks. Number one, journal. You could get a completely blank journal. Maybe your kid likes lines. That's perfectly fine too. Maybe you want a pre-made one. There's tons of opportunities to buy journals that already have prompts in them. You can do that. If you're brand new to nature journaling, then maybe you might need that. No shame. That's totally fine. You find what fits for your family and actually for each individual child within your family. Some crayons, some markers, and colored pencils. We do a lot of watercoloring. It's very peaceful and quiet and you don't need much. You're usually carrying a water bottle anyways. And then they have like travel size paints that are really easy to use while you're out in the field. glue stick or tape in case they find a really cool leaf on the ground. We don't encourage our kids to pick them off the trees, but if it's on the ground, it might be something cool for them to add into their journal. Field guides are really cool. And you want to talk about including education directly into this experience. They're now identifying those birds, those bugs, those trees, those flowers, right? They're now having the opportunity to dig deeper as a scientist and make those connections to what they are actually seeing. And you can go through the list. There are lists similar to this all over Google. You can Google it and find, or just mess around, put stuff in. Don't put too much in. You don't want it to be too heavy. You don't want to be the one ending up having to carry everyone's nature journal, right? Or nature backpack. We want them to carry it on their own. So add what you see fit. Sometimes it's just nature journal and colored pencil. It doesn't have to be everything. Okay. Okay, activities for nature journaling. So here's just a couple of things that I've already talked about. Leaf rubbings and tree rubbings. Those are awesome, always fun. Sketches, water paintings, poetries and quotes. Sometimes they want to write their own poetry the older they get. Something that they see really allows them to open up some creativity that they've never seen before. Pressing flowers, nature stamp art. So using collecting rocks and acorns and other objects. And sometimes it means you're connecting to nature and bringing it home and finishing this journaling. And that's okay too. It doesn't always have to be within the field that you're working on these activities. Lists of birds, flowers, and insects they observed with those field guides in hand could be really helpful. Record of the seasons of a tree. So if you're going to that same space, allowing them to find one object that they really want to follow throughout the season and letting them document how that object changes. Photographs. So my daughter has one of those really cool Polaroids. Of course, Polaroids like way old school, but the small ones for them to carry around now as well are really cool too. So pictures do have a place. It doesn't mean that everything has to be artsy. My middle child, he doesn't love it. He doesn't love drawing. He doesn't love painting and things like that. And so pictures work really well for him, and writing works really well for him. So again, don't create a box for your children. Let them explore, let them find what works for them. Okay. Another thing that my kids have really loved is identifying animal tracks and scat. It's really funny. Of course, every kid loves poop, right? I mean, who doesn't when you're out in nature? And teaching them the word scat has been a nice replacement, but identifying scat is a really cool activity, and so is footprints. And so we tend to do that quite a bit on our naturing. Okay. And so here, in the middle, you can see this is one of our scavenger hunts that we've set up for our nature co-op through New Mexico Wildlife Federation, where we're teaching the kids to identify plants and trees as we're going on a hike. And on the backside, actually, it's also done by color. So they can specifically find, we choose 4 colors for whatever the season is that we're out and about, or wherever the trail that we're going to. And they can either draw, document, tape, whatever they want to do, the wildlife and the plant life that they see that matches those colors. And so there again, you're really feeding into the different age brackets as well. Some of our younger kids like to do it by color, while some of our older kids really like to identify the plants, and vice versa. It also allows for a family to participate all together on one sheet. Little kids can flip it over, older siblings can be on the front side identifying plants. And then you can see our little girl off to the left doing some watercolor, sitting at a picnic table out in a nature spot. And to our right is one of our kiddos, one of the staff members for New Mexico Wildlife Federation, creating his nature stick. And so using some twine and adding in pieces of nature that he found while he was on his hike as well, which is another really cool opportunity. Okay, so let's talk about some benefits of schooling outside. I think a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to go over them anyways, because in today's day and age, it's important for us to keep this in the forefront of our minds, that this is a way to help us cope with being at home with the kiddos full time. Okay, so students who get to experience an outdoor learning environment tend to be more attentive and therefore have a better recollection of the information that was shared. So to me, This means I have a middle child who really doesn't like math. Okay. If it's a nice day, and even if it's sometimes not, we'll get bundled up and we'll go outside and we'll do math outside. And for some reason, not for some reason, there's tons of evidence as to why this works, but his mind just opens up. He understands it a little bit more. He's a little more relaxed. Okay. And so sometimes getting that experience, that same information, but outdoors can be very beneficial for our kids. Okay, so here's our next one. Students, oh, that's the same one. Okay, consistent exposure to nature decreases stress and anxiety, helps elevate mood, and helps with emotion. Bing! All of us adults need that too, and I'm sure your kids do as well. We sometimes tend to push our kids' emotions aside a little bit, just saying, well, they're kids, it's not as stressful for them, but it is. And so if you feel like you need it, when you get up from a stressful meeting or 7 Zoom meetings on your computer and you need time to go walk outside, take your kids with you because they need it as well, okay? Children often have too much exposure to digital screens via television, computer, and cell phone. Let's talk about now during COVID while they're all on school on their screens. This can result in a nature deficient disorder, which may lead to obesity and possible psychological and academic issues. Outdoor learning allows students to put their focus back on nature. I mean, this is plain and simple. Having them in front of screens all the time is not good for their bodies, okay, in any way, shape, or form. So we want to commit to switching that around and getting them outside. Now, is that logical all the time? No, but that doesn't mean they can't take their computer outside with them. If they're doing virtual learning, great. Let them set up in a space outside where they're still connected to Wi-Fi. There's no one to say that that's not going to be a little more helpful than being cooped up indoors. Outdoor environments naturally inspire children to become more physically active. Woo-woo. We need them outside. We need them running, playing, getting that energy out, right? I mean, who's going to agree with me? I'm sure there's no one on here that wouldn't. This is a key element. Exposure to bright sunlight found in nature is also healthy for vision. It's good for their eyeballs, right? We want healthy eyes. I was in nature all the time, even though I have glasses, I promise, but it is so good for their eyes, and exposing them to that light, that natural light and not artificial light indoors, can build healthier eyes. In outdoor settings, children are more motivated to work together in groups, which can also improve their social skills. They learn to manage conflicts, communicate, and cooperate with their peers in a more effective manner. This also means that you need to step back a little bit. They can do it, allowing them to try, not guiding every single learning experience and letting them work together in a group to solve problems out in nature. Oftentimes you want to jump in and you want to help. Well, let me show you. Let me help. They'll actually learn more if you step back and let them do it themselves. Okay. They may fail. That's okay. They may fail again. Totally fine. They may fail a third time. That's okay too. It might mean 4 or 5 trips out to that same space before they solve that problem. But when they solve that problem on their own, imagine the benefits that are happening inside that child's body when they know they did it completely on their own. Okay, so making sure that we're not jumping in too soon. We're allowing them to be the lead on their experiences. Outdoor learning provides children with hands-on experiences in nature. Most children learn better by using their senses. Outdoor environments provide this perfect place to do this. 5 senses, we've been talking about it this whole time, a full body connection to the space, right? Okay, so taking it outside, it can look so many different ways. I reached out to my homeschool community and I said, show me some of your outdoor learning. I mean, you can see this is very different. The far left side is at a park. All the siblings got their books out and their math at a park. Middle picture is in a backyard. Great. They just brought their basket of school stuff out and they're doing schoolwork outside, right? It doesn't always have to be all nature and it doesn't always have to be all school. You can combine them to be a 50-50 thing. My favorite is the far right picture. He's like, yeah, I'm studying. What's up on the top of the slide? How cool is that? There doesn't have to be a perfect, cozy place. Whatever makes that child happy and makes that child feeling connected to this space is perfect. Again, don't box them in, let them choose their spaces. Okay, so just a little bit on bringing it in, natural loose parts, okay? So we want to talk about some options for bringing nature inside. It's not always conducive to go outside. I'm on meetings sometimes all day long, and I can't get the interactions to be outdoors. So we bring it in. We do a lot of stuff with rocks. We do a lot of stuff with pine cones and sticks, and adding and subtracting with the rocks. I mean, there's tons and tons of things you can do. The other day we were studying dinosaurs, and we took sticks and we used them as fossils to create replicas of dinosaur fossils. Okay. Bridge building, instead of that pencil, bring in a stick. Instead of those straws, bring in some sticks. Bring in nature where you can. Dramatic play scenarios. I mean, I've been in a classroom where pine cones are being used as telephones, and that same pine cone is being used as an ice cream cone, and that same pine cone is being used as a crown that's been tucked on top of a little girl's head. There are so many different things when we take off the well, I've said it a million times, when we stop putting the kids in a box, we give them the opportunity to make what they want to make, their imaginations will go wild. So as soon as you give them something and you don't tell them how it's supposed to be used, they'll use it to the best benefit for themselves. And that is exactly what we need them to do. Another cool thing that we've done is we've actually built fairy houses, and then we've tracked our fairies and written long stories over multiple weeks about our fairies that live in our backyard or on our back porch. This was on a really cool it's a co-op opportunity for New Mexico Wildlife Federation, and this young lady is 14 years old, and everyone was sitting down doing their nature journaling. She didn't feel like it today. I never force it except on my own kids. But here she was studying Roman numerals in her math. And so without any prompting, she sat down and she was working on practicing her Roman numerals with stick that she found. I mean, it's a perfect example of when you let them be, they will actually do more than you would expect them to do. And if somebody would have come up to her and told her to do this, it wouldn't have been such a meaningful experience. The fact that she sat down and she did it herself made it that much more meaningful. All right. Let the parents ask why, and the child produce the answer if he can. After he has turned the matter over in his mind, there is no harm in telling him, and he will remember it, the reason why. Okay. This is what we talk about. Let them try to do it on their own. Let them try to be the person that solves these problems. If they ask for help, you're more than welcome to help them, of course, but allowing nature to be that third teacher, allowing them to experience whatever is there for them to experience and not standing in the way of it. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I hope that this training was helpful for you. If you have any questions or concerns, or you need outreach for homeschooling, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. My email address is Sarah, SARAH, @nmwildlife.org. You can also find some homeschool resources on Facebook at Homeschool Homies NM, at Homeschool Homies NM. It's actually an initiative that I started under the Federation when the pandemic hit, to be sure that we were reaching out to all of these brand new homeschool families and providing them with assistance and guidance to be successful in their homeschooling strategies, whether it be that their kids are virtual, whether it be that their kids are fully homeschooling. Doesn't matter to me. There's zero judgment. All I am here to do is support. And so I want to support you if you need it, if you need additional ideas. But thank you for coming. I appreciate you. Your kids appreciate you. Get outside, spend some quality time, and cherish these moments that you have with them.